What if the election was already decided? Not by ballots, not by machines, not by conspiracy, but by money, dark money. Money you never see, money you can't trace, money that shapes outcomes long before you step into a voting booth. Tonight, we're not talking about theory. We're talking about structure. We're talking about incentives. We're talking about the machine. And before you pick a side, stay with me, because this is not about red. It's not about blue. It's about insulation. It's about leverage. It's about who really has it. Our government did not become bloated overnight. It didn't become wealthy overnight. It didn't become insulated overnight. It happened slowly, quietly, conveniently, because accountability faded. And when accountability fades, power expands. That's not partisan. That's human nature.
This is not noise. This is not outrage. This is conviction. We believe in faith. We believe in family. We believe in this country and the people who built it. Here, we challenge narratives, not individuals. We confront issues with truth, respect, and courage. These are serious conversations, rooted in principle, guided by tradition, and focused on the future. Welcome to What If Unfiltered. This is more than a show. This is a movement.
Let me ask you something. When was the last time Congress looked afraid of the American people? Not afraid of headlines, not afraid of Twitter, afraid of citizens. See, in a functioning republic, elected officials should feel that weight. Instead, we see approval ratings at historic lows, but re-election rates somehow above 90%. We see career politicians worth tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't need a political science degree to know that something doesn't line up, and most Americans feel it. They may not use words like incentives or say regulatory capture, but they feel it. Something feels managed, something feels insulated, something feels disconnected. And when something feels insulated from you, that's not representation, that's protection. Protection of something else. So ask yourself, what's being protected? The machine. Now, let's define that carefully. The machine is not your neighbor. It's not voters. It's not everyday Americans. The machine is the permanent political class plus the donor ecosystem that feeds it. It survives elections. It adapts to party shifts. It protects incentives. And incentives drive behavior, always. If a politician depends more on donor networks than voters for survival, who do they really answer to? If 60% of funding comes from 10 wealthy sources and 40% comes from tens of thousands of citizens, who has the access? Here's a clip on campaign fund impact for billionaires alone.
For more on this, we're joined now by Frank Clementi, Executive Director of Americans for Tax Fairness. Frank, thanks so much for joining us today. According to the study, billionaire spend leapt from $32 million in 2010 to $611 million in 2018. I mean, what is driving this increase?
Well, clearly one factor is they're getting a lot richer, so they got a lot more money to spend. And there's a lot more billionaires now. Just in the last year, they went from 614 billionaires to 640. But the big factor really is, if you look at our data, is that 2010, the Supreme Court made the Citizens United decision, which opened the floodgates for wealthy people and corporations to play a much bigger role in election campaigns. They're able to make unlimited contributions to third-party organizations. Some of them are shadowy, some of them are disclosed, where you can actually find out how much money is being contributed. And that is where this dramatic growth in campaign contributions occurred.
So ask yourself, who gets access to your elected official, you or your mega donor? That's not ideology, that's math. Dark money doesn't just buy ads, it buys insulation. It buys the ability to ignore public opinion and survive. It's the ability to vote for a 2,000-page bill no one reads and survive. It buys the ability to campaign as a populist while governing as a donor, because re-election funding is secured upstream. By the time we see a candidate on a debate stage, they've already passed a viability filter. Early money determines viability. Viability determines visibility, and visibility determines electability. So by the time we're choosing between a curated option. That's not chaos. That's architecture. Let that sit. And once you see architecture, you can't unsee it. Now, before anyone jumps to the wrong conclusion, this isn't about saying elections don't matter. They matter. They matter enormously. But elections happen inside structures. And if the structure tilts incentives away from voters, the outcomes tilt too. Not because citizens are stupid, not because people are evil, because incentives shape behavior. Let me put this in plain terms. If you worked at a company and your paycheck didn't come from customers, but from a private group of investors, who would you prioritize? The customer or the investor? Modern politics often resembles that. You are the customer. Mega donors are the investors. And investors always expect return on investment, ROI. See this clip on dark money.
They send out all these mailings. They don't care if they lie.
Nobody knows who they are. They call them dark money groups, and that's exactly what they are.
Corporation funnels money to a dark money group. They send out postcards attacking the opponent. When that candidate gets elected, they support the agenda of the corporation.
I don't know how to fight them. I can't pick up the phone and say, hey, what's your interest in candidate X? Because I don't know who they are.
And it's not just Montana.
Campaign finance is the gateway to every other issue that you might care about.
Americans are barraged by these political advertisements that are funded by who knows whom. We don't even know if they're domestic.
Politics is just child's play to business. They know how to manipulate the system.
You can buy the politicians, you can buy the judges.
When I first got to the FEC, I thought that we would work together on issues such as disclosure.
If A fails 3-3, Ocean fails 3-3, that fails 3-3.
The FEC will not enforce the law.
And why does this matter? Well, when elections become investments, policy becomes the dividend. Now, here's the dangerous part. If citizens sense something is off but can't map it, cynicism grows, and cynicism helps the machine because a cynical citizen disengages. They stop paying attention. They assume nothing changes. And disengagement is the ultimate insulation. But clarity disrupts insulation. And that's what this series is about. Not rage, not hysteria, clarity. We're here not to attack voters. We're here not to inflame division. We're here to audit incentives, because the moment citizens calmly audit incentives, the machine starts to sweat. And here's the shift. The enemy is not your neighbor. The enemy is not someone who votes differently than you. The enemy is unaccountable power. The enemy is a system where funding pipelines matter more than families. The enemy is insulation from consequences. That's structural. And structural problems require structural awareness. So let's get practical, because dark money can sound like a vague political phrase, but it's not vague. It's actually very specific. It's very real. And it's operating in plain sight. Dark money is political spending where the true source of money is hidden, anonymous, untraceable to the average citizen. Check this out.
Dark money has heralded a new era of vast corruption. If corporate America was going to reassert its power, it had to create a counter-revolution and take political power back.
We had a little Bible verse. The wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. So let's baptize the billionaires' money.
Supreme Court rolled back rules on campaign finance.
Citizens United said corporations can create a super PAC.
Now, corporations could fund elections with unlimited amounts of cash.
One way you could look at it is that it's a fair fight. Another way is that both parties are corrupt.
When it comes to the power of big business, the fix seems to be in.
A tiny group of people have bought an inordinate amount of influence.
People with money will always have an advantage. Always.
Money has a way of changing the rules.
And the way it happens is through legal loopholes, widened over decades, not by accident, by design. People think dark money is a suitcase of cash, like a spy movie. No. Dark money is paperwork. Dark money is nonprofits. Dark money is networks. Dark money is lawyers who know exactly how to move influence without fingerprints. So let's walk through the pipeline. Step 1, you find a wealthy donor, a billionaire, a corporate interest. Sometimes foreign aligned capital through subsidiaries gives money to a nonprofit. These are often called 501c4s. They're labeled as social welfare organizations, which sound harmless. They actually sound charitable. But here's the loophole. They are not required to disclose who their donors are. So the money goes in and the public never sees the name. Step 2, the nonprofit can then spend on politics. Technically, politics is supposed to be their primary purpose. But the definition of primary is soft enough to drive a truck through. So they spend millions, sometimes hundreds of millions. And then step 3, they transfer the money to a super PAC or allied groups or other shells. And once the money is moving through layers, it becomes almost impossible for the average American to trace. It's laundered. And that becomes the final step, the part you actually see. The ads, the mailers, the grassroots campaigns that aren't grassroots at all. The social media pushes, the attack ads that feel like they came out of nowhere. That's dark money in action. Maybe it's easier to see it than just hear it. Play the clip.
501c4s, these tax-exempt organizations, they don't have to say who their donors are. But a few weeks later, in October, just before the election, $60 million was moved from Future Forward USA Action to Future Forward, which is the Biden super PAC. Super PACs do have to disclose who their donors are. But the donor in this case was their nonprofit arm.
Right, which we don't know. Right.
No one knows what Future Forward USA Action is or who's behind that. And so, you know, good government groups and people who are concerned about the lack of transparency in the system are really concerned about this trend, which has been going on for quite a while now, because voters can't assess what are the interests and the agendas that lie behind all of that money. An individual who gives $64 million to a political cause likely wants something in return for that, but we don't know what that would be.
And so this is, focused on the Biden campaign, this particular example, but Republicans are doing it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, let me pause here because this is where it gets personal. You've probably experienced this without even realizing it. Did you ever turn on the TV during election season and it's just wall-to-wall ads? Every commercial break, every YouTube pre-roll, every radio segment, and you think, who's paying for all of this? Because we know it's not cheap. It can't be funded by small donations from working American families. No, it's funded by pipelines, by networks, by people with an interest. And here's the part that should bother you most. It's not always about helping a candidate. Sometimes it's about controlling them. Because money isn't charity in politics. Money is leverage, always. And leverage changes behavior. Let's take a short break and we'll be right back. Hey everyone, it's Mike. I just wanted to have a heart-to-heart with you. This podcast, this movement, it only goes as far as you take us. I need you to stay involved. I need you to share it. I need you to let everyone know about it. Even if you didn't like it, share it with them anyways. They probably have better taste than you do anyways. At least that's what I'm hoping for. But in all seriousness, share it, follow us, engage with us. Send us an email at info@whatifunfiltered.com and tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Challenge us, ask better questions, engage with us though, and maybe I'll wind up using that email in one of the episodes or on a short, but we need you and we can't do this without you. So engage, follow, share, subscribe. It costs less than 23 cents a day. And I really appreciate all of you being here. And why don't we do this together and take this thing to the next level and get our country back? All right. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's keep going. Now, here's where we need to say something clearly. This is not a one-sided issue. It's not a partisan rant. If anything, dark money is a proof that the machine is bigger than party because networks exist across the spectrum. Different branding, different messaging, same structure. And the permanent political class understands this. They understand how to perform conflict publicly while protecting the donor system privately. That's why you'll see politicians scream at each other on cable news and then vote together on the same massive spending packages. You ever notice that? Public outrage, private alignment. And the reason is simple. When donor incentives are shared, behavior converges. Now, let's talk about another layer people avoid because it sounds uncomfortable. Foreign influence. And let me be careful here. This is not about xenophobia. This is not about blaming immigrants. This is about sovereignty. Every nation on earth protects its political decision-making. America should be no different. Foreign governments lobby. Foreign billionaires influence. Foreign-aligned corporations donate through subsidiaries. And they do it because American policy affects the entire world. Trade, military posture, energy markets, technology regulation. So, of course, foreign interests want leverage. The question is, why do we tolerate loopholes that allow it? And again, this isn't theoretical, it's documented. Lobbying disclosures, nonprofit networks, influence campaigns. And once you understand that, you realize something sobering. This fight isn't really left versus right. The fight is citizens versus capture. Citizens versus insulation. Citizens versus a system where money speaks louder than votes. And that brings us to the next uncomfortable truth. Public service used to mean something. It meant sacrifice. It meant stepping away from comfort. It meant putting the country above personal gain. But when dark money becomes structural, service starts to look different. It starts to look like strategy. It starts to look like positioning. It starts to look like career management. It starts to look like an investment portfolio. And this is where people begin to feel something is completely wrong, even if they can't explain it. So why do so many politicians enter office modestly and leave wealthy? Why do so many of them seem to outperform Wall Street in stock trades? Why do they regulate industries and then get hired by those same industries when they retire? That's not an accident. That's a revolving door. And the revolving door is not a scandal. It's a feature. Think about it. If you're a lawmaker writing regulations that affect pharmaceutical companies, and you know there's a 7-figure lobbying job waiting for you, how objective are you really going to be? If you're shaping energy policy and The energy industry is funding your campaign and might actually fund your retirement. How independent are you? Now, I want to be clear. Not every politician is corrupt, I don't think. Not every lawmaker is compromised, hopefully. But the structure creates temptation, and incentive structures matter more than good intentions. That's the lesson here. We shouldn't design systems assuming everyone is virtuous. We should design systems assuming incentives will be exploited because they always are. Now, let's talk about something even more subtle, cultural distraction. You ever notice that every election cycle feels like the end of the world? Every issue is existential. Every disagreement is catastrophic, and every opponent is a threat to democracy. Why? Because existential politics drives turnout, and turnout drives donations, and donations drive leverage, and leverage drives policy. When everything feels like a cultural war, nobody is auditing the budget. When everyone is fighting over headlines, no one's tracing donor networks. That's not an accident. That's strategic amplification. Division keeps citizens horizontal, and audits require vertical thinking. Horizontal conflict benefits the machine. Vertical scrutiny threatens it. And here's the part: when people feel overwhelmed by constant outrage, they shut down, they disengage emotionally. They say, it's all corrupt anyways. That sentence, it's all corrupt anyway, is the machine's favorite sentence because it protects insulation. Cynicism is protection for power. Clarity is threat to power. So let me bring this back to something foundational. America was not designed to be run by a permanent class. We rejected monarchy. We rejected aristocracy. We rejected inherited power. We built a constitutional republic where power flows downward from citizens. But when funding flows upwards from donors, the power tilts upward too. And that tilt is subtle. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens bill by bill, vote by vote, appointment by appointment. And then one day, citizens wake up and say, why does it feel like they don't answer to us anymore? Because the incentive shifted. That's the thought line of this entire episode, incentives. So stay with me, because we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll pivot from exposure to leverage, from mapping the machine to tighten accountability. And that's where the real power begins. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, it's Mike Breslin, founder of What If Unfiltered. And I just wanted to take a minute and talk to you about something practical and intentional. Everything you see associated with What If Unfiltered, the colors, the designs, the phrases, none of it's random. This isn't merch for the sake of merch. This is identity. Our colors are inspired by our Marine Corps dress blue uniform. So understand this. You're not buying a shirt or a hat or a hoodie. You are wearing a statement that says, faith still matters. Family still matters. This country is worth defending. It's not loud, it's not trendy, it's deliberate. We call it body armor because that's exactly what it is. Something you wear when you're willing to stand for something, even when it's uncomfortable. If you believe in the mission, see the merchandise at whatifunfiltered.com. And remember, shipping is always 100% free, and 5% of all clothing purchases will be donated to faith and veteran organizations, because it's the American way. Let's get unfiltered.
Okay, so now we pivot, because exposure without direction becomes despair, and despair is exactly what the machine relies on. Hopeless citizens disengage. Engaged citizens apply pressure. So let's talk about leverage, not rage, not fantasy solutions, leverage. Because systems don't change just because people yell. Systems change when incentives shift. If dark money created insulation, then accountability must remove insulation. So, step one, transparency. Mandatory disclosure for all political spending vehicles. No more donor secrecy in federal elections. If you're influencing American elections at scale, your name should be visible to the American people. And not because we hate you, but because accountability requires visibility. Sunlight's not radical. Sunlight is stabilizing. So step two, foreign influence closure. And again, this is not anti-immigrant rhetoric. This is just simple sovereignty. Every nation protects its political decision-making. If foreign-aligned entities are routing money through subsidiaries or nonprofit, that's a loophole. And loopholes are getting closed. And they get closed when citizens demand it consistently. Step three, small donor amplification. If large donor dependency creates insulation, then broad-based small donor systems create responsiveness. The more politicians depend on many, the more they listen to many. That's structural alignment. That's not partisan, structural. Now, here's where it gets real. Reform doesn't happen because politicians wake up inspired. Reform happens because the cost of ignoring citizens becomes too high. And that's where tools matter, not just outrage, tools. Political performance scorecards, attendance, dark money exposure, net worth growth during tenure, foreign influence alignment, legislative productivity, ethics violations. Nothing shouted, documented, not framed as an attack, but an evaluation. Because public service is a job and jobs get graded. The machine survives narrative. It struggles with documentation. If network spikes become campaign issues, behavior adjusts. If donor opacity becomes a liability, funding strategies adjust. If attendance becomes a metric voters track, attendance improves. That's how leverage works. Now, here's something important. None of this requires violence. None of this requires chaos. None of this requires tearing the system down. It just requires maturity, consistency, repetition, accountability. Republics don't collapse because citizens ask questions. They collapse because citizens stop asking questions. Now, let's bring this back to identity because identity matters. Red versus blue is small. It's loud, it's emotional, it's profitable to others. Red, white, and blue is bigger. Red is sacrifice, white is principle, blue is opportunity. Those colors are not partisan, they're foundational. The flag doesn't belong to donors. It does not belong to lobbyists. It doesn't belong to career politicians. It belongs to citizens. And citizens have leverage when they remember they do. Let me say this clearly. This country is not broken beyond repair. It's misaligned. Incentives drifted. Insulation grew. Transparency weakened. But the core structure still stands. The Constitution still stands. Elections still matter. Free speech still exists. And those tools are powerful. The American system is designed to self-correct, but only if citizens participate in the correction. The machine wants you to believe it's too big, too entrenched, too permanent. History disagrees. Political machines have fallen before. Corruption cycles, they've been corrected before. Transparency reforms have happened before. And they happened when citizens calmly insisted on better standards, not by destroying the system, by tightening it, by refining it, by restoring alignment. That's the spirit of this series, not demolition, restoration, not rage, ownership, not division, clarity. So here's the closing question. What if the election isn't hopeless? What if it's simply operating inside incentives we haven't audited yet? What if the solution isn't burning everything down, but tightening the screws where they loosened? What if Americans stopped fighting each other and started auditing upward? What if transparency became a voting issue? What if dark money exposure became politically toxic? What if performance tracking became normal? It's not utopian. That's accountability. And accountability is patriotic because patriotism isn't blind loyalty. It's responsible stewardship. We the people was never a slogan. It was a job description. And somewhere along the way, we outsourced the job. Now we take it back, calmly, deliberately, structurally. The government is not theirs, it's ours. But it got bloated because we stopped measuring. It got insulated because we stopped auditing, and it got wealthy because we stopped grading. And that changes when citizens act like owners again. Iron sharpens iron. So let's sharpen each other, not with hatred, with clarity, not with division, with documentation, not with chaos, but with consistency. Stay with this series because next week we go deeper. Mega donors, billionaire pipelines, the architecture shaping elections long before debates begin. So subscribe. Share this with someone who still believes America is worth tightening up, not tearing down. Stay sharp, stay engaged, and let's bring receipts back to public service. God bless you. And let's get unfiltered.
These conversations don't end when the episode does. They carry forward into how we think, how we speak, and how we engage the world around us. Here, we don't demand agreement. We ask for honesty. We don't chase outrage. We pursue clarity. Because better questions shape better conversations. And better conversations shape better outcomes for our families, our communities, and our country. If this episode sharpened your thinking, share it, continue the conversation, and let's get unfiltered. Until next time, this is What If Unfiltered, where conviction is rooted in faith, guided by tradition, and focused on the future.